Today we're going to talk about why you should not start on a leader bike, a leader sports bike. Today I'm going to give you a couple of reasons on this topic. I know everyone has a desire to get a 1000cc bike. I think it's a goal that everyone should have, but the question is, can you immediately jump and start on this bike? And the answer is absolutely no. And the reasons why you should not even consider doing this is due to the following. Firstly, this bike, a leader bike, any leader bike, I'm on the Kawasaki Ninja ZX-10R, any leader bike is just gonna have way too much power for a beginner rider to handle. It's just got way too much power. I'm on the ZX-10R here, and I'm on basically, even in it's got 3 power settings, 3 modes, and even in the low setting, this thing has high, medium, low, and even in the low setting, this is way more powerful than any other bike that I have kind of ridden. So I have another bike. I have a 650, the DL650 is my adventure bike. Even this bike on low setting is way more powerful even than the Suzuki DL650. And that Suzuki DL650 is not a slow bike, that's pretty fast. But this thing has got just way too much power. And if the power setting on low mode is that extreme and that high, imagine how the power setting on the medium and the high setting is. The low setting here on this bike, the ZX-10R, is about 60%. So that translates to about the power of a 600 engine, right? Even that 600 equivalent power is, I believe, in my opinion, that's just way too much power for any beginner to handle. Just absolutely way too much. Now the other thing is, right, people kind of end up getting leader bikes because it's kind of like a stepping stone, right? It's kind of the ultimate goal of a sports bike rider. The ultimate goal of a sports bike rider is get to a leader bike. So this, in fact, it pretty much becomes kind of your dream bike, right? You'd probably want to get this secondhand or new. Even if you get a secondhand or new, it's kind of your dream bike. In my case, I ended up getting a brand new bike. And the chances of, if you start immediately on a leader bike, you're gonna face a very high degree chance of dropping the bike or kind of laying the bike down. That's a given, man. Even me, I'm an experienced rider, and even I sometimes struggle to keep this bike upright. And it's basically not during the high-speed riding. Anyone can go fast on a bike, but in situations like this, I'm going to show you, it's kind of the slow speed handling on a bike. That's kind of be your major cause and your major instances where you're gonna drop the bike likely. So for example, okay, I'm going to take this turn here, right? It's a very sharp turn, but just kind of doing this turn, just a simple turn like that, it's a difficult challenge for a beginner rider to handle. Even those slow, complex turns, you're gonna more than likely kind of drop the bike, and the reason due to that is the other reason why due to that is it's just due to the nature how this bike is set up, man. These bikes, these sports bikes, these super sports bikes, they're set up, the position is so damn aggressive. You're sitting up like really forward, your legs are up high, and it's basically also these clip-ons, the handlebars are so damn low, right? So that does not allow you to easily kind of turn and make easy turns during slow speed riding. Compare that to a standard upright bike. A beginner bike typically has upright handlebars, and it's the upright handlebars and the upright standing kind of sitting position makes it much easier to handle and navigate kind of slow speed riding, and allows you to control the bike more. So what that does is the chances of you laying down the bike or dropping your dream bike are absolutely very low on a beginner bike compared to this 1000. And even if you're on a super sports like a 600 that has the same riding mechanics, I mean these days the leader bikes pretty much are very kind of close to weight. I mean this ZX10R, I would say is almost as light as any 600 out there. It's about 442 or 443 pounds. The most 600s are like about 420 pounds, so it's only 20 pounds lighter, heavier, and kind of slow speed handling. You gotta drop this bike, man. And the last thing you want to do is when you get your dream bike, man, when you get your dream, the bike that you worked your life, your whole life working so damn hard for, and you drop it, that's just not a good thing, man. You want to keep this bike, you want to keep your bike beautiful, you want to keep it scratch free, especially if you get it brand new, man. You want to keep it good looking, and the last thing you want to do is drop your bike. Okay, so let me talk about some other reasons why you should not consider getting a 600 or a 1000 Super Sports. Yeah, so here's another reason why you should not get the 1000 bike. So the other reason is the Super Sports in general. The riding visibility, the visibility, particularly the rear view visibility on a leader bike is very low. Most of these Super Sports give you absolutely shitty mirrors. They firstly put you in a very aggressive riding position, right? So you kind of cramp, and unless you're used to it or you like it, you're already cramped in the beginning. And then the other thing they do is they give you absolutely shitty rear view mirrors, and you got no idea what the hell is behind you, man. And usually most motorcycle riders usually get rear-ended, or that's kind of what they either drop the bike, or if they get into accident, it's some dick behind you that's kind of tailgating you, and they rear-end you. That's where and they kind of hit you from the back. So the fact is, Ren, you want to have some rear good visibility, and fortunately, and so one of the reasons why I got the ZX10R is in terms of rear view visibility, it has probably one of the better rear view visibilities stock. So I have it's not as good as my other V-Strom, which gives me absolutely almost perfect rear view vision. This one is in comparison to some of the other leader bikes, I find it a little bit more easier to see what's behind me, but it's still not perfect. So you don't want any risks or any kind of confidence reducing elements, like not being able to judge what the dicks are doing behind you. So that's another reason why you really, unless you're really good driver, you're a very fantastic driver, you should not consider jumping on a 1000. Now, I'm not the world's best rider. I'm just consider myself an average rider. I don't think I ride a lot, but I don't consider myself kind of a world-class rider or anything like that. I just try to stay safe. And even for me, I feel I respect this bike. I respect the power of the ZX10R, man. I just respect it. When you get on a bike, I don't care what kind of bike you ride, you gotta respect it, man, because most bikes are typically way faster than cars. And if you get on a 1000, this is gonna be faster than pretty much 99.99% of any vehicle out there on the road. This thing accelerates. A typical leader bike is gonna accelerate to 60 miles an hour in less than 3.3 seconds. This thing gets to 60 miles an hour in 2.9 seconds. So you got a lot of power on a leader bike. And even in my case, man, when I get on this bike, I am just absolutely extra cautious. And you gotta think you gotta have that kind of mentality, man. You gotta have that kind of mentality when you get on this leader bike. And kind of what ends up happening is sometimes in my case, you kind of have this moment of lapses, right, where you forget about what kind of power you're on, and you run into very dangerous situations. I've been on this bike. I've only had just recently got it, but I've already had a couple of instances where I didn't respect the power, especially when I'm taking turns into corners. And when you try to take turns into corners, man, you got to respect the power on this, because any small error is fatal on a leader bike given the power. So so I just think it's just way too much power for a beginner. And even in my case, I mean, I'm not an expert rider, but you got to respect the freaking power on this bike. And I think that respect comes from experience. The more you ride, the more the miles you have, the more kind of years of riding you have, then only then I would recommend you consider getting a leader bike. Okay, the other reason why you should not get a leader bike 1000 cc's is, now, firstly, when you're riding a motorcycle, there are a lot of risks associated with motorcycle. Firstly, in kind of the first risk is getting to understand the bike and trying to manage the power. So that's a full-time job. On a 1000 cc's, you got your hands full thinking about like kind of handling and trying to stay focused and handling the power of these 1000 cc's. I got 172 horsepower sitting right under my ass here. So that's a full-time freaking job trying to think. But the other thing that is really not in your control. So the good thing is that is in your control and you try to do your best. But the thing that's really not in your control is, man, when you get on the freaking road, you get on freaking California freeways, you gotta run into dick drivers. There gotta be a bunch of dick drivers out there that are trying to they don't pay any attention to the road. They have no idea what the hell. They don't know how to share lanes. You're gonna run into like kind of unknown traffic situations, kind of crazy drivers out there. You're gonna run into like intersections where people are freaking running through red lights. So the other thing you really got to kind of build up to is you got to really have an experience of riding a many miles where you can predict or kind of anticipate some of the events that could occur from a road conditions perspective. And that comes with experience. Like, for example, in an intersection, most of the accidents occur on intersections. And then the other thing is the other accidents kind of high probability on the freeways when drivers don't really kind of look, when they switch lanes, they don't look, and then just sidewipe the motorcycle rider. And that, I've seen a bunch of freaking motorcycles in front of me where they get sidewiped by kind of the drivers. So my point is, these elements of the way drivers drive and the way they kind of ride through intersections, they ride on freeways, that experience comes through riding many years, and that's something you really can't control, and that's something you kind of just see the hazards when you go through kind of DMV school. It's basically hazard avoidance. You want to avoid hazards, you want to predict where the hazards are, and that comes with kind of riding a low powered bike over several years. Then you step up into kind of leader bike capabilities, where then you can try to manage both problems at the same time. So the bottom line is, guys, man, I know everyone wants to get a leader bike, and everyone has dreams to get there, but I just don't recommend. I mean, you can do what you want. I mean, you want to get a leader bike and just freaking take on the challenge, yeah, go for it, but I just don't recommend it, man. I just don't recommend it due to the reasons that I gave. So I would recommend, man, if you want to get into the leader bike power, bike, start small, starting in a beginner bike. And I'm going to do another video on giving you some recommendations on what beginner bikes that I think make sense. But I think it makes sense, to start, take your baby steps, get some riding experience, and then eventually kind of get a 600, and in the best case, get your goal of getting a leader bike, get to the top of the hill, but do it with time. Take your time in, getting there. Don't rush it, man. Don't rush it. It just does not make sense.